We are happy to announce that today we are interviewing Ryan Gottfredson, Assistant Professor of Leadership at the Mihailo College of Business and Economics at the California State University. He is a best-selling author of Success Mindset, consultant, trainer, and a speaker. With his daily activities, Ryan helps organizations, leaders, and managers identify their current mindsets and shape them to fuel better decision-making, growth, and performance. In addition to his experience as consultant, trainer, and speaker, he is a respected authority and researcher on topics related to leadership, management, and organizational behavior. Ryan has published over 17 articles across a variety of journals, including Journal of Management, Journal of Organizational Behavior, Business Horizon, Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies, and Journal of Leadership Studies. His research has been cited more than 2,000 times since 2015. This year, Ryan has published his first book, Success Mindset, Your Keys to Unlocking Greater Success in Your Life, Work, and Leadership, which has gone to become a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. Ryan, thank you for accepting our invitation. It is our great pleasure to have you as a guest and share your knowledge and experience with our users.
Oh, thank you so much for having me as a guest, and I'm so excited to be introduced to your audience.
Ryan, you hold a PhD in organizational behavior and human resources from the Indiana University. What motivated you to pursue a PhD in this area? And can you tell us more about your research background?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I think that I realized my interest to study topics related to organizational behavior when I was in high school. My most favorite class in high school, and I'm not sure if there's any other school in the country that has this class, and I imagine we probably didn't have it for very long, but the class was sports psychology. And so during the class, I read books such as Seven Habits by Stephen R. Covey. I read some leadership books by some professional basketball coaches like Pat Riley. And I remember being in that class, reading these books on leadership and thinking, man, if there's a career out there where I could write books like this, that's what I would love to do. But I didn't know that there was a field of study that looked at that until several years later, where I met a professor at Harvard Business School, and I asked him what he taught, and he said organizational behavior. And I asked him, what's organizational behavior? And he essentially said, the study of people within businesses, and it's the psychology behind why people do what they do within an organizational setting. And to me, this was, the light bulb went off, as this is exactly like sports psychology, but applied to business, and that this could be a great fit for me. And so that kind of set me on the trajectory of going in the direction of organizational behavior and human resources. And ultimately that landed me at Indiana University, where I did my PhD. And now I'm at Cal State University, Fullerton, where I teach and do research on leadership.
And looking back at your professional experience, you first started your career as a human resource intern in an international company for medical devices. What would you say were the primary challenges you encountered when starting with your professional career there?
Yeah, working at Stryker was one of the best experiences that I've had. It was just, and what made it such a great experience is I had the best manager I've ever had. That manager individualized her leadership for me and got the most out of me because of it. I was very engaged in my job. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily a challenge to get going. It was a great experience because it helped me to make the decision. Do I want to go the academic route, or do I want to go the corporate route? And while that was a very positive experience, one of the things I realized is I wanted to be more of a creator of knowledge as opposed to a user of knowledge. And so that's one of the reasons why I went the academic route. But looking back on that experience, I see that there were some, I wouldn't say challenges, but some lessons that were learned that help me both in terms of the current research that I'm doing, but also professionally. And one of the things that I learned is, as a young 20-year-old working in this large international organization, is I became focused on trying to get ahead, doing what was best for myself. And I look back on that situation, while I think I had a really great experience and I accomplished some really great things, at the same time, while I was doing things well, I'm not sure I had the right motives behind those things. And what I've come to learn through my research and also my consulting is our motives matter just as much as what we do. And the better the motives that we have, the more effective we can be. And so that was one of my big lessons that I learned from that experience.
And you already scratched the surface on your motivation to pursue a career in academia. However, can you elaborate more on this topic? Why exactly did you decide to pursue an academic career?
Yeah, so I guess I going back to my vision as a high schooler, that I would love to write books at some point in time, and bring about ideas that could better the lives of others. And so that's, I'm not saying you can't do that in other disciplines, but for me, one of the fits was I felt like was academia. And I think this speaks to some of my own skills, strengths, and talents that I have. Is I could consider myself a natural go-getter. Is I don't necessarily need anybody to light a fire under me in order to get going. And I enjoy a lot of autonomy. So for me, academia seemed like a really great fit because I could light my own fire, and I could have the freedom and flexibility to work on the projects that I want to work on, as opposed to within a corporate environment. I've kind of felt when I've worked in those places that I have to work on the projects that are of most interest to the customers. And so I enjoy, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy research so much, is because nobody's telling me what to do research on. I could choose exactly what I want to do research on. And so I really enjoy the autonomy that comes with that. But then I also, now that I'm both an academic and a consultant, is I could take the things that I'm learning from my research and apply them into businesses and help organizations to become more effective and more successful.
Ryan, currently you're a leadership and management professor at the Mihala College of Business and Economics at the California State University, where you have been recognized as one of the best professors. How challenging is to be responsible for educating young people who are just starting to scratch the surface of their professional life?
Yeah, I would say I just find it interesting how you ask how challenging is it, and I guess I don't see it as being challenging in the sense of, because I see it as an opportunity as opposed to maybe a challenge, and that's just my perspective. Not that it's easy, but I'm incredibly fortunate to have the ability to work with young people who are starting out in their careers and to try to help them be successful. And I love working with them. And we've got a really unique demographic at Cal State Fullerton. So many people don't know this, but Cal State Fullerton, our business school, is the fourth largest business school in the United States, student population wise. So we've got about 10,000 business school students, and the majority of these are undergraduate students. And also, the majority of these students are minority students and first generation college students. And so this population is an incredibly meaningful group to work with, because they are the first, for many of them, they are the first in their family to ever go to college. And I'm in a position, especially teaching courses on organizational behavior and leadership, to be able to not just help them be successful in their careers, but really to be successful in life. How do we become a person that can become successful really in any discipline or any domain in which they operate within, whether that's work, their family, professional groups, churches, teams, whether that's athletic or other teams. I love working with these students and being able to just help them become better people. And I consider it a very unique opportunity, and one that I'm really blessed to be in the position where I could have that opportunity.
Ryan, I have mentioned in the introduction of this interview that you have published many articles covering topics such as leadership, behavior, follower performance, emotional intelligence, performance management. Your work has been published across a variety of respected journals, and your research has been cited more than 2,000 times. In an article published in the Harvard Business Review, you talk about developing the right mindsets in order to become a great leader. In light to that, I would like to ask you which characteristics are essential for anyone who is aspiring to be a front runner and have a successful managerial career.
Yeah, great question. I love the question. And in fact, really, the academic leadership literature has spent 70 years essentially trying to answer the question. I'm going to just rephrase it briefly, but the last 70 years of leadership research, the primary thing that's been a focus is what do leaders need to do to be effective, and what characteristics do they need to possess? And this is good, and we have a lot of answers for that. We don't have a whole lot of precision because there's so many answers. But at the same time, I think that question and that perspective is a little bit short-sighted, because I don't think that leaders are effective because of solely what they do. I think in order to be an effective leader, we need to not just focus on our doing. Instead, we need to focus on our being. And so for the last 7 years, the primary focus of my research has been, how do we tap into this being element of leadership? And everything has led me to mindsets, because mindsets are the mental lenses that we wear that shape how we view the world. And depending upon how we view the world, that shapes how we think about the world, how we learn in our world, and how we behave in our world. So for example, if we have two different people and they both receive constructive criticism, well, depending upon their mindsets, they're going to interpret that differently, and they're going to think about it differently, and they're going to behave differently. So one person who sees constructive criticism as a bad thing is going to naturally get defensive and probably ignore that constructive criticism. But somebody who sees constructive criticism as being a good thing, they're going to approach it. They're going to use it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And the interesting thing is that when it comes to developing ourselves, or even developing leaders and managers and people in our organizations, most overlook mindsets. Yet it's the most foundational aspect for why we do what we do. In fact, a recent research project that I worked on is I surveyed 150 training and development professionals in their organizations. And what they said is the number one thing that they focus on for developing their leaders is interpersonal skills and communication skills. So 70% of organizations say they focus on interpersonal and communication skills to develop their leaders. Only 12% of organizations said that they focused on mindsets. And here's the thing that's interesting is if organizations don't focus on mindsets, they say that they are effective at developing their leaders 33% of the time. But if they do focus on mindsets in developing their leaders, they say that they are effective at developing their leaders 66% of the time. So they're twice as effective at developing their leaders if they focus on their mindsets. And so that's currently the space that I play in. I help organizations to develop their people and their culture through a focus on mindsets.
Ryan, you provide training for professionals looking to improve their leadership skills. You've mentioned at the beginning that you have collaborated with Deutsche Telekom, with companies such as Circle K. However, can you tell us more about your training practices?
Yeah, it always depends on the organization and what they're focused on. So what do they want to improve? And I would say most organizations that I work with, they want to improve the development of their leaders or the development of their employees in general, or they want to make their organization more agile and future ready. And I come at all of these topics and try to drive all of these factors through a focus of mindsets, as I mentioned. And so one of the first things that I do when I work with organizations is I have a mindset assessment. In fact, if you're interested in taking it, it's free on my website at ryangottfredson.com. But I'll have these individuals, whether it's a group of leaders, a department, or even the organization as a whole, take my mindset assessment in advance of a workshop. And then what happens is once I get their results in, is I can aggregate their results up to the collective level and look at the collective mindsets within that group or within that organization. And it provides a really deep dive in terms of the quality of the current culture. It allows us to identify the common fears, the common roadblocks that the organization is experiencing in terms of leadership effectiveness, agility, and future readiness. And so based upon the results that we get from that collective assessment, then we could implement a wide variety of programming in order to help facilitate the development and the shift of mindsets within the organization.
Ryan, in addition to all of the questions that we've mentioned prior, one of the many reasons why we are happy to have you as a guest is to discuss your new book, Success Mindset, your keys to unlocking greater success in your life, work, and leadership. What motivated you to write this book, and can you tell us more about the idea behind the book?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the primary reason why I wanted to write this book is because what I've learned through both 30 plus years of academic research has already been done, and my own research is, as I mentioned, our mindsets are foundational to our success. But the problem about this, and I think that many people think about the concept of mindsets as being this fluffy topic. And the reality is there's a lot of substance to this topic. In fact, our mindsets are literally neural connections in our prefrontal cortex that shape how our brain operates. But I think one of the challenges and one of the reasons why many people and organizations don't focus on mindsets is simply because they don't know which mindsets to focus on. Because I think many people understand the value of mindsets, they just don't know which mindsets to focus on. And so my book presents a summary of essentially the last 30 years of mindset research across psychology, education, management, and marketing. And I've just brought all of this research together into one framework, into one book, to help people awaken to what mindsets are out there, what mindsets they currently have, and what mindsets they need to develop if they want to unlock greater success in their life, work, and leadership.
And when you were writing this book, did you have a type of target readers in mind? Whom would you say this book is intended to, and what can the readers expect from your book?
Yeah, I had primarily three audiences in mind when I wrote this book. The first audience is, I'm going to call them natural achievers. These are people who want to be on the cutting edge of their own personal development, or they want to institute cutting edge developmental work within their organizations. The next group audience that I had in mind as I wrote this are people who have felt stuck, whether it's in their personal life or in their professional life. And I consider myself somebody who has felt that way in both aspects of my life. And I want to help these people get unstuck. And I think the best way to get unstuck, if we feel stuck, is to focus on our mindsets. And then the third audience that I had in mind was organizational leaders, and helping them better understand that they need to bring the idea and the concepts of mindsets into their organizations if they want to become more successful. And so what I would say, so those are the three audiences. What I would say in terms of what readers can expect from the book is I believe that it will allow the reader to do perhaps the deepest introspective dive into themselves that they've ever done. And when we do that type of work, what that means for us is we're deepening our self-awareness, we're deepening our mindfulness, and we're enhancing our emotional intelligence, and which will allow us to unlock the success that we're seeking.
Very important topics, accordingly to me.
Yeah, I think so, but I'm biased.
Ryan, you're an assistant professor, consultant, trainer, speaker, and a best-selling author. There is no doubt that you have an exciting career with many undertakings. To is unavoidable to ask you about your next endeavors. Are you working on a new article, research paper, or perhaps on the outline of a new book?
All of the above. I'm busy, which is great, but I am itching to start writing my next book. I've learned a lot. So even though my book Success Mindsets just came out in May officially, I haven't added any content to the book for probably almost 2 years. It was kind of a long process to get it uh, to the marketplace. And I've learned a lot in the last 2 years when it comes to mindset. So I'm chomping at the bit to provide the new learnings that I have. And one of the aspects that I'm excited to bring out into the world is I want individuals when they read this next book to do an even deeper dive into themselves. And it's going to cover topics that relate to as leaders, what our fears and our insecurities are and how those are connected to mindsets. In fact, one of the places that I'm going to go and where I'm currently doing some research around is the role that life trauma plays in shaping our mindsets and therefore how we operate. And so one of the things that I found as I work with organizations is a lot of times an HR leader will bring me in to work with their executives and or a particular executive. And what is commonly said is this person, this leader, is wreaking havoc on the organization, but they can't see it. And we need your help to help them to deepen their self-awareness and their emotional intelligence so that they quit wreaking havoc on the organization. Because this leader's thinking, I'm doing the best that I can, but they're having a detrimental effect on the organization. And so what I'm finding as I work with these leaders is that these types of individuals have a very strong resistance to even looking inwardly. They have a really hard time introspecting. And so as I'm doing research on this, what I'm finding is that one of the what psychologists have found is that when people struggle to look inward, it can be a sign that they experience significant trauma at some point in their life. And so I think that if we want to do a better job of developing leaders in organizations, we're going to have to address some tough topics like trauma and the role that plays in how individuals develop. So it's a really interesting area of research to kind of explore this, because I don't think really anybody has looked at this from a leadership perspective. And I'm excited to roll that out into the next book.
That, that sounds like a very interesting research question. I hope that we will have the opportunity to talk again and discuss your next book in more details.
I hope so too. That'd be great.
Ryan, 2020 will go down in history as one of the most challenging years in the new century. Among the many troubles brought by the coronavirus, we are facing changes in our professional life as well. How can one manage to stay organized and productive in a time of a global pandemic?
It's such an important question. One of the things that we need to realize is that when a crisis occurs, and I think that this coronavirus is a global crisis affecting everybody, but regardless of the crisis, when a crisis occurs, our natural reaction is to be like a turtle that puts its head in its shell, to just self-protect. But this is really problematic when it comes to us being adaptable, agile, and successful moving forward into the future. Because when we are in self-protection mode, we are primarily focused on ourselves and just kind of maintaining the status quo. But if we really want to be successful and navigate the crisis in the most effective way, we've got to be really intentional about keeping our necks out and about looking for the opportunities associated with the crisis. So to give you a quick example of this is I've got two pizza places down the street from my house, both on opposite sides of the intersection. And when the coronavirus hit and we shut down kind of our economy, one pizza place essentially went dark. I didn't even know if they were open. The other pizza place, they started to be very engaged in the community. They were posting a lot on social media, and they offered up a promotion, and that was that you could buy a make-at-home pizza kit. And at the start of the shutdown, many of the stores in our area, toilet paper was not found. And so as part of this promotion, they said, if you buy this make-from-home pizza kit, we'll actually give you a roll of toilet paper. And so one of the things, as I look at this and how we've got essentially two very similar businesses, one was like this turtle, they pulled their head in their shell and they just were hoping to survive. The other group, they kept their neck out in such a way that was probably costly for them in the short term. But what it was doing was they were benefiting the community and they were strengthening their relationships with their customers. And so when we think long-term about these two pizza places, which one is going to be better off? And I think the answer is probably pretty clear. It's those that are the pizza place that is developing better relationships with its customers. And so that's maybe costly in the short term, but it's going to have huge benefits in the long term. And so in order for us to navigate this time, we've got to be very intentional about keeping our necks out as opposed to reverting back to this self-protection mode.
I'm staying optimistic about the future.
For sure. Where are and this is our mindsets. How do we see the situation? Do you see it for new opportunities, or do you see it as though the sky is falling? And how we see this pandemic is going to shape how we think about the pandemic, how we learn in the pandemic, and how we behave as we go through the pandemic.
Ryan, lastly, what would your advice be for anyone who is aspiring to improve their performance and to be successful in their professional life?
Yeah, great question. So I think that when most people try to improve, as I mentioned earlier, they generally focus on behaviors. What do I need to do differently? But one of the things that I've learned from my own personal experience is that when I try to do things differently, I feel like it just doesn't go very smoothly. It's really uncomfortable. And I generally don't feel like I'm as successful at improving as I would like to be. And what I've learned through doing mindset research is the reason why it's not very successful is because if we try to improve our behaviors, but we don't simultaneously try to improve our mindsets, our prevailing mindsets will continually resist the changes that we're trying to make. And so if we're wanting to improve ourselves at a personal or professional level, the best place to start is with our mindsets. Because as we shift our mindsets forward, naturally our thinking will improve and naturally our behaviors will improve. It's a much more natural way of developing ourselves. And so I hope, if anything, in this interview, it just motivates individuals to want to dive into the topic more deeply, to learn more about mindsets and what mindsets they currently have and what mindsets they need to develop if they want to unlock greater success. And as I mentioned, one of the places that you could start is at my website at ryangottfredson.com, where you can take my free mindset assessment. And then also my book is available there as well. And if you go through my website, there's a whole host of freebies that are available. So for example, if you buy the print version, you could get the audio version for free. So hopefully, and there's other resources as well, but those are a couple that might be of interest to your listeners.
Ryan, thank you for your time. I will for sure add success mindset to my read list, and I encourage all of our listeners to do the same. It was my pleasure talking to you.
Yes, it's very great to be connected with you. Thank you so much, and thank you for the great questions.